One thing I've always watched for along the way is these new opportunities that might unfold. And sometimes those opportunities show up during data collection efforts when your focus is on collecting A and you get X, Y, and Z on top of it, kind of like a little hidden cherry on top. And we went to this fire in Leavenworth, Washington, really nasty weather fire, a big fire, just very hot, very dry conditions. And we were doing a study with some really innovative electronic camelback systems. It was basically a hydration study. So we were deploying these camelback systems that we'd borrowed from the Army. Really neat instrumentation. So they had digital flow meters embedded in them, so they could tell you how many drinks a person was taking every time they would take a drink, what the volume of those drinks were. You can then build these spreadsheets and figure out what their fluid intake patterns and behaviors were all day long. So that's kind of what we were after. Well, we have instrumentation involved with that that included measures of body temperature, both skin temperature and ambient temperature, but then also core body temperature. And core body temperature is challenging to measure in the lab. It's not the most popular measure in the lab because it involves, I always say we can either go up or we can go down. It's your choice. Up, we can go up through the nasal cavity into your esophagus and we can measure esophageal temperature. Or we can go, that's going down. Going up is on the other end, rectal temperature. But we're not going to convince fire crews to do either one of those on the line. And so we use these little thermistor systems that they ingest. So we had those in place at the time. So they would ingest this thermistor through at the beginning of the day, and that passes through the GI tract. As long as it's in place, we get a good measure of core body temperature. Well, we weren't seeing anything interesting really with the study except the drinking patterns. That was kind of unique. And that was the whole focus of the study. Well, one of the individuals in the study went down with a heat exhaustion, heat-related injury. So he was pulled off the line, evacuated from the line, but at the time, he was instrumented up with all of these devices. So we had all of his drinking behavior, we had all of his detailed movement patterns, and we had his body temperature measures through this whole process. And so, although that was not the intent of that study sequence, that data came along for the ride accidentally. His injury, he was taken to the hospital and released later that day. He was fine. He took the next day off and he was okay, thank goodness. But that injury did not occur as a result of us doing the study. It was just part of the risks that occur with this type of job, within this line of work. And so we thought, wow, that is really interesting that happened. The odds of that happening are extremely low. The odds of that happening while being instrumented with the devices that we had in play is infinitely lower. And myself and another researcher with our team, John Cuddy, he and I decided this should not go unreported. This is really, really unique data. And so we wrote a case study up on that heat-related injury situation. So taking advantage of those surprises, and even though that was not the main purpose for us being out there, that accidental chunk of data is far more interesting than why we were out there in the first place. So having that little accidental heat-related injury, we really learned a lot about what makes these teams tick out in that environment and how they need to pull back so that they don't tick too hard and then develop or drive themselves into this situation of exertional hyperthermia. And so that extra bonus data really became the defining part of that whole fire that we went to. And so I have definitely learned that taking advantage of a situation and getting everything you can possibly get out of that data collection effort, because you don't know when you're going to be back. We have never, ever since that time, that was 15 years ago at least, we have not seen anything remotely close to that level of exertion. And we rarely see those kind of temperatures even under laboratory conditions. So take advantage of what you can get when you can get it, especially in those environments. And sometimes the unexpected becomes the pivotal thing that you anchor everything to.